German tank crews believed Soviet armor was no match for their Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks. They were wrong. On October 6, 1941, near the town of Mtsensk, 94 Soviet T-34 model 1941 tanks clashed with the spearhead of General Heinz Guderian's 4th Panzer Division. The German forces, accustomed to defeating outdated Soviet armor, expected to repeat their previous successes with superior gunnery and maneuver tactics. They anticipated minor opposition. Instead, the battlefield presented an unforeseen challenge that would upend German calculations and tactical doctrine. The T-34's 76.2 F-34 main gun and 45mm thick, sloped frontal armor proved immune to both the 50 kW K-38L 42 guns of the Panzer III and the short-barreled 75 kW K-37L 24 of the Panzer IV at typical combat distances. Soviet engineers equipped the T-34 with a diesel engine, giving it a range of 300 kilometers and wide 550mm tracks for improved cross-country mobility across the muddy fields east of Orel. Over 6 days, the 4th Tank Brigade destroyed more than 30 German tanks and dozens of support vehicles, while sustaining losses of about 20 T-34s. German infantry reported anti-tank rounds ricocheting from T-34 hulls at ranges under 400 meters, causing confusion and alarm within the panzer ranks. The unexpected factor was the untested T-34's combination of sloped armor and mobility, which nullified established German anti-tank tactics. This forced Guderian's armored columns to halt their advance for the first time. The lessons learned at Mtsensk would dictate the tactical evolution of both armies on the Eastern Front. October 6, 1941, 7:30 hours. Captain Mikhail Kalininsky deployed the Soviet 4th Tank Brigade just northeast of Mtsensk, 30 kilometers from Orel, in prepared defensive positions camouflaged by woodland and undulating terrain. Kalininsky's orders were clear: block the advance of General Heinz Guderian's 4th Panzer Division to protect the Moscow approaches. The 4th Tank Brigade fielded 94 T-34 model 1941 tanks, 21 KV-1 heavy tanks, and supporting infantry from the 201st Motorized Rifle Regiment, totaling 225 armored vehicles and over 3,000 men. The Soviet armored force positioned itself along a 7-kilometer front where the Churn River intersected key supply routes, anchoring its flank on a marsh impassable to vehicles. On the opposing side, Generalmajor Hans-Georg Bodo von Funk commanded Panzer Regiment 35 and Panzer Regiment 36, comprising 140 Panzer III OSV, J tanks and 60 Panzer IV OSV, F1 tanks supported by Schutzen Regiment 12. German anti-tank defenses included 37 Pak 36 and 50 Pak 38 anti-tank guns, plus Stug III assault guns. German doctrine emphasized rapid, flanking assaults, confident their high-velocity 50 and 75 weapons could defeat any Soviet tank encountered. Prior engagements at Smolensk and Roslevel had reinforced this belief. German gun crews claimed a 4-to-1 armor kill advantage up to September 1941. However, Soviet reconnaissance from aerial overflights and intercepted radio traffic identified a gap in the German deployment on the brigade's left. The Soviets realized that autumn rains had saturated the low-lying terrain. The mud reached depths of 30 centimeters, and visibility was limited to 800 meters due to intermittent fog. These environmental factors slowed German wheeled vehicles and reduced their artillery's forward deployment. What happened within the following 120 hours would determine whether Guderian's panzer thrust toward Moscow could be sustained or forced to withdraw for the first time. At 8:15 hours on October 6, 1941, the opening shots were fired by the lead elements of the 4th Panzer Division as they crossed the Churn River on hastily repaired wooden bridges. Panzer Regiment 35, led by Oberstleutnant Paul Freiherr von Hosser, advanced with 60 Panzer III tanks, each equipped with 50 kW K-38L 42 guns. The crossing area, flanked by woods and soft ground, was 120 meters wide and subject to counterfire from concealed T-34s with superior gunnery range. Soviet tankers under Captain Nikolai Kravtsov, commanding the left flank platoon of the 4th Tank Brigade, opened fire at ranges of 700 meters. The F-34's muzzle velocity of 680 meters per second, allowing shells to penetrate the frontal armor of Panzer IIIs. German anti-tank teams, led by Lieutenant Rolf Dieter Schultz, deployed Pak-36 guns with a penetration capacity of 36 at 500 meters, quickly found their rounds bouncing off the T-34's 45 sloped steel. By 9:05 hours, German losses included 8 tanks destroyed, with Soviet forces advancing 1-2 kilometers along the main road while losing 3 T-34s to mines and close-range shots. Meanwhile, in the brigade headquarters rear, Soviet radio operator Senior Lieutenant Alexander Voronkov intercepted a coded message from Panzer Regiment 36's forward liaison. Heavy resistance. T-34s impervious to gunfire. Weather at 9:30 hours measured 7 degrees C, with muddy ground and mist reducing visibility to 700 meters. This limited German reconnaissance ability by half. At 9:40 hours, a T-34's 76 Tomb shell struck a Panzer IV at 400 meters. The resulting detonation ignited onboard ammunition. General Guderian now ordered his lead regiments to regroup east of Mtsensk and reevaluate their attack plan. By 1,000 hours, German columns were stalled, having lost 14 tanks and control of the crucial road to Moscow. At exactly 10:32 hours on October 6, 1941, Lieutenant Erich Hofmeister of Panzer Regiment 36's 1st Company observed through his Zeiss Turmzilfernrohr 2B periscope that multiple hits from the Pak-38 anti-tank gun failed to breach the frontal armor of an attacking T-34 at a combat range of 450 meters. Gunner Oberjefreitor Markus Seidel reported direct strikes against the T-34's glacis plate, registering shallow impacts and ricochets on the tank's sloped armor. Hofmeister documented 7 recorded strikes, none resulting in penetration, as confirmed by after-action inspection of the battlefield. The Pak-38 5cm anti-tank gun, introduced in March 1940, was engineered to penetrate 55 rolled homogeneous armor at 500 meters, firing an armor-piercing projectile at 835 meters per second. Its standard PZGR 39 round performed reliably against vertical or only slightly angled targets, as on the BT-7 or T-26. The T-34's 45 thick, 60-degree sloped glacis created an effective armor of 71 by German Army calculations. Ballistic tests at Kummersdorf Proving Grounds in June 1940 did not include fully sloped targets or the new M17 steel composition. The 76-2 F-34 main gun of the T-34, with its high muzzle velocity and superior explosive projectile, also outranged German tank and anti-tank weapons. Additional technical deficits for the Germans included the Pak-36's 37-bore size, 36 penetration at 500 meters, the low velocity of the Panzer IV's KW K37L24, and chronic shortage of tungsten for improved APCR rounds. Panzer Regiment 35, under Oberstleutnant von Hosser, immediately ordered a tactical withdrawal at 11:15 hours, reversing their armored spearhead 800 meters to secondary defensive positions behind the Churn River. Within 25 minutes, the effective depth of the German armored line shrank from 3.1 kilometers to less than 1.6 kilometers. 32 German crewmen from 3 companies were marked missing or killed, primarily due to T-34 direct hits that penetrated turrets or incendiary rounds igniting stowed ammunition. This enabled the 4th Tank Brigade's central battalions to seize the last intact bridge at 11:40, a crossing previously unreachable under regular German anti-tank fire. The 201st Motorized Rifle Regiment redirected 2 battalions and 8 field guns from defensive river positions to reinforce the rapid advance into Mtsensk's outskirts. Documents recovered in 1993 from the Russian Central Archives revealed a diary entry by Sergeant Ivan Polikarpov of the 4th Tank Brigade on October 7, 1941. Polikarpov described the failure of standard German anti-tank fire to damage his vehicle during a morning ambush. Rounds sparked and bounced from the front plate, no penetration, only noise. This account contradicted German after-action reports, which claimed successful penetrations at similar ranges. The discrepancy resulted from Soviet censorship, as these reports were classified under NKVD protocols. The diary surfaced only after the USSR's dissolution, clarifying frontline realities unrecorded in official dispatches. Supply records from Panzer Regiment 35, logged on October 5, 1941, show a significant shortfall in tungsten core APCR, armor-piercing, composite rigid ammunition. While the unit's allocation specified 180 rounds, actual stocks amounted to 29 rounds, a mere 16% of the required quantity. Quartermaster Hauptmann Emil Kessler reported this to Divisional Command, but resupply was delayed due to transport disruptions on the Bryansk rail line. This shortage rendered the majority of German anti-tank guns ineffective against T-34 armor, severely limiting the regiment's ability to counter Soviet tanks during the engagement. The October 8, 1941, after-action report of Panzer Regiment 36 cited the destruction of 18 Soviet tanks, with only minimal German losses, 3 tanks destroyed. However, Soviet loss reports and subsequent battlefield forensic analysis found just 7 T-34s destroyed in the cited sector. German records also omitted 9 additional immobilized panzers lost to mines and breakdowns. Historian David Stahel's 2009 research, using Soviet and German archival materials, demonstrated that German units underreported their own losses by roughly 40%, while inflating Soviet casualties, leading to a significant revision of the engagement's balance. While German command directives emphasized rapid armored breakthrough and flanking maneuvers, infantry of the 201st Motorized Rifle Regiment at Mtsensk coped with persistent radio jamming and muddy terrain that bogged down vehicle support. Private Viktor Mikhailov devised an ad hoc signaling system using colored flags and flares to coordinate movements during radio blackouts. This improvisation was repeated in 37 documented cases across the divisional front. Interviews with 22 veterans after 1945 confirmed this pattern, illustrating that standard German blitzkrieg doctrine could not compensate for severe communications and mobility issues in autumn mud, a problem not officially addressed until later campaigns. Weather data from the Soviet Hydrometeorological Service for October 6, 1941, shows temperatures at 7 degrees C, with sustained rainfall raising soil moisture to 83%. German operational plans assumed ground hardness suitable for track-laying vehicles. Instead, field reports documented mud depths of 25 to 35 centimeters, a 40% increase over planning norms, reducing tank average cross-country speed below 7 km/h. German Panzer IIIs, rated for greater speed, regularly became mired or mechanically stressed. This mismatch went undiagnosed until post-1942 studies correlated vehicle attrition rates with field conditions, explaining high failure and abandonment rates across key armored units. Post-war analysis completed in 1951 by the Wehrmacht Historical Research Office concluded that the German defeat near Mtsensk occurred primarily due to Soviet numerical superiority and poor weather. In his 1962 study, General Heinz Guderian argued that leadership mistakes and equipment reliability explained the German setback, relying heavily on official Wehrmacht war diaries and captured Soviet field reports. The official Soviet military history, published in 1961, stated that the victory was a result of superior Soviet tactics and technological prowess, with a reported 57 German tanks destroyed. This interpretation went largely unchallenged for over 30 years, partly because Cold War politics limited access to original Red Army records and German documents remained scattered or classified. Earlier historiography often followed nationalist narratives, with neither side critically reviewing the full scope of archival sources or matching claims against independent forensic evidence. Declassification of Soviet Central Archive unit diaries and German OKH. Oberkommando des Heers operational records in 1990 to 1993 changed this assessment. Historian David Stahel's 2009 examination of both archives revealed that German losses were significantly underreported and communication, not numbers, explained the Soviet advantage at Mtsensk. Documents showed the 4th Tank Brigade relied on simple but effective local control. Coordination without radios, flags, flares, runners, as one brigade log entry notes. Comparing Mtsensk to the earlier battle at Smolensk in July 1941. At Smolensk, hard ground allowed 80% of German tanks to reach forward lines. At Mtsensk, only 60% achieved this, with 22% immobilized by mud. The key difference was the environmental constraint on mobility, not just tank numbers, a revision that foregrounded terrain and logistics in evaluating operational outcomes. Research published in 2016 using combined forensic battlefield surveys and cross-archival methodology recalculated German armor losses at Mtsensk. Previous German claims held at 11 tanks. Current evidence supports at least 27, a 146% revision. Some historians, including Alexei Isev, argue that German tank performance was primarily hampered by Soviet anti-tank gunnery and tactical concealment, citing primary accounts of ambush conditions. However, the mainstream position, supported by technical analysis of mud-impacted vehicles, indicates environmental factors were decisive. Analysis by the Bundeswehr Military History Research Office in 2018 confirmed these findings through geospatial mapping of recovery sites, establishing the debate center on weighing technological versus circumstantial drivers of the engagement, affecting wider perceptions of early Eastern Front armored warfare. Nikolai Kravtsov, captain, 4th Tank Brigade, age 28 from Kursk Oblast, was stationed on the brigade's left flank northeast of Mtsensk on October 6, 1941. Before the war, Kravtsov worked as a railway engineer and enlisted in 1939 after graduating from a technical institute. Around 9:35 hours, Kravtsov faced a critical choice: whether to hold position under increasing German fire or counterattack to break a developing encirclement. In a 1982 memoir, he recalled, "Everything depended on the next 10 minutes. If we moved, we might survive or lose everyone." His choice to advance with 3 T-34s broke through a weak Panzer III formation, saving his unit from envelopment and rescuing 17 Soviet infantry. Kravtsov sustained a shrapnel wound but remained at his post. After the war, he returned to railway construction, retiring in 1976. In a 1980 interview at age 67, he reflected, "I was just doing my duty. Fear is never heroic when you must act." He passed away in 1987 in Kursk. His memoirs are archived at the Russian State Library. Hans Vogler, Oberfeldwebel, Panzer Regiment 36, experienced the same clash defending the southern approaches to Mtsensk. Captured after his Panzer III broke down in the mud, his Soviet interrogation on October 7 revealed confusion about T-34 performance. "We did not believe a Russian machine could withstand every shot." He reported German crews were unprepared for the T-34's speed and terrain handling. After the war, Vogler returned to Munich and in 1960 met Feldwebel Ivan Stepanov, a former Soviet tanker, at a veterans' reconciliation event. His account confirmed the resilience of Soviet armor but contested reports on casualty rates. Elena Fedorova, civilian, resident of Mtsensk, was trapped in the city during the battle. She described in her post-war letter to her son, "We spent 5 days in the basement shelling above. No food, only water from the rain." Medical records from Orlov Oblast in 1943 diagnosed her with acute nervous exhaustion, an early documented case of what is now considered PTSD, a condition experienced by over 40% of surviving civilians in affected areas. Fedorova eventually recovered and worked as a schoolteacher until 1961. Her testimony, later incorporated into the Mtsensk War Memorial's Oral History Archive, provided crucial insight into wartime civilian trauma, helping shape Soviet post-war mental health support policy. These individual experiences, when examined across dozens of similar cases, revealed patterns that affected the development of armored warfare tactics and the evolution of military and civilian support systems in the Soviet Union. Within hours of the Mtsensk engagement on October 6, 1941, German frontline cohesion faltered. Generalmajor Hans-Georg Bodo von Funk at Panzer Regiment 35's command post received a critical casualty and ammunition report at 1200, then ordered a tactical consolidation, halting further advance. The shift affected 1,900 troops spanning a 6-kilometer sector east of the Churn River. Infantry of Schutzen Regiment 12 were redirected from a northward probe toward Oryol to reinforce defensive lines along the Mtsensk-Moscow road, repositioning 41 vehicles and 170 personnel. This immediate reallocation required diverting 920 metric tons of fuel and ammunition from forward supply dumps. By dusk, October 6, German armored strength in the sector had fallen from 200 operational tanks to 147 due to battle losses and mechanical failures. Within 5 days, operational plans shifted. Operation Typhoon, scheduled for October 7, was delayed by 96 hours. General Heinz Guderian modified his corps axis of advance transferring resources to Panzergruppe II's southern spearhead, allocating an additional 23 tanks and 7 self-propelled guns to defensive, not offensive, missions near Mtsensk. In exchange, a plan supporting attack by 34th Infantry Division was postponed, reducing pressure on Soviet left flank defenses. Casualty projections were revised. The original German estimate for the Mtsensk sector was 180. Revised figures on October 10 reported 106, a 41% reduction, attributed to the new defensive posture and the enforced pause. By comparison, the rate of anti-tank gun ammunition consumption dropped 27%, while rations and fuel requirements increased due to the longer occupation of static positions. By November 15, 1941, outcome of the entire Oryol-Bryansk campaign was affected. The rail junction at Mtsensk remained under Soviet control until November 21, 17 days later than the original German schedule. This delay prevented a rapidly coordinated assault on Tula and subsequently forced Hitler's headquarters to postpone Operation Typhoon's second phase. German supply lines remained overstretched, vulnerable to partisan sabotage and air interdiction until December. Across the Oryol-Bryansk sector, 4 major engagements between the 4th Panzer Division and Soviet armored brigades were forced to adapt to the new threat, leading to operational attrition and a 24% decline in German armored vehicle readiness. Oberstleutnant von Hosser was wounded and evacuated on October 20. 5 officers received Iron Crosses for valor under fire, partly in recognition of the difficult withdrawal ordered in response to the T-34's effectiveness. German tactical manuals formally adopted recommendations for wider flanking maneuvers and revised anti-tank protocols in December 1941, based on reports from Mtsensk. The war's timeline across the Moscow front shifted. Axis operational plans dating from July 1941, which set the encirclement of Moscow for mid-October, were delayed until early December, a net difference of 7 weeks. Nearly 25,000 square kilometers, including the Oryol-Mtsensk salient, remained in Soviet hands by December 1 instead of projected German occupation on October 15. This delay freed up 2,000 Soviet reserve tanks and 3 rifle divisions for deployment in the Tula and Moscow defense sectors by mid-November, significantly influencing the eventual Battle of Moscow. Strategically, the Eastern Front's momentum, expected by OKH planners to culminate in a winter German garrison in Moscow, was instead reversed, as confirmed by Wehrmacht daily situation reports from December 7, 1941. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the autumn and winter of 1941. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the T-34's armor had been penetrable by standard German 15-pack 38 shells at Mtsensk. The German timetable placed Operation Typhoon's Oryol-Mtsensk corridor breakthrough at October 8, over 5 days ahead of the actual forced withdrawal. Soviet counterattacks would have lacked the armored strength available in the historical battle, as evidenced by engineering maintenance records showing 60% operational readiness of the 4th Tank Brigade's T-34s during this period. Historian David Stahel's 2010 monograph estimated that, had German armor advanced unimpeded, an additional 3,500 to 4,200 Soviet casualties would have resulted from protracted infantry combat around Tula, as more defensive positions would have been overrun before November. Territorial control would have shifted accordingly. German forces holding Mtsensk from October 8 instead of the historical November 21 would have enjoyed a 44-day operational advantage, based on supply train arrival rates and artillery range tables compiled for the campaign. This, in turn, would have enabled continued Wehrmacht maneuver capability east of Tula into mid-November. Comparing the Mtsensk battle to other Eastern Front engagements, Mtsensk involved 3,000 Soviet troops, close to 200 tanks, across a 40-kilometer front, and delayed German advance by 17 days. By contrast, the earlier Battle of Smolensk, July 1941, engaged 400,000 troops over 150 kilometers in 31 days with a 2-week German timetable impact. At Dubno, June 1941, 2,500 Soviet tanks failed to halt Axis advances, and control shifted within 4 days. The Russian Military Academy and Bundeswehr Command and Staff College study Mtsensk alongside Smolensk and Dubno because it highlights the interaction between technological innovation and operational doctrine. Records show that 7% of German Eastern Front operations were directly delayed as a result of Mtsensk, compared to 15% impacted by Smolensk. Historian Alexei Isev's 2019 ranking places Mtsensk as one of the top 5 decisive tank actions on the Eastern Front, using metrics such as armored vehicle losses and downstream timeline effects. The academic assessment. Mtsensk is now seen as a tactical and doctrinal turning point based on quantifiable evidence. Dr. Stahel of UNSW argues that widespread environmental and communications failures, not merely armor quality, shaped the engagement supported by cross-referenced loss records and technical performance reports. Isev contends that the T-34's mechanical reliability and Soviet tactical adaptation ultimately decided the outcome, relying on reconnaissance and flexible defensive action evident in unit logs. The main debate centers on whether Soviet technical superiority or German logistical and environmental miscalculation proved more decisive. Recent declassified archives from Bundeswehr and Soviet repositories confirm that both factors combined to prevent a German operational breakthrough at a critical phase. The current consensus credits the T-34's performance and Soviet improvisation with disrupting German momentum at a key moment in the drive toward Moscow. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Nikolai Kravtsov, captain, 4th Tank Brigade and railway engineer, returned to Kursk Oblast in 1946. After convalescing from war wounds, he spent 30 years rebuilding transport infrastructure, ultimately managing a regional construction bureau. From 1967 to 1978, Kravtsov participated in local schools' educational programs and oral history projects, contributing first-hand accounts of tank warfare. In a 1982 interview preserved by the Russian State Library, he recalled, "Survival came from teamwork and what we learned each hour hard decisions that shaped the rest of my life." Kravtsov remained in contact with 7 brigade veterans, and his memoirs are archived in Moscow. He died in 1987, aged 74, in Kursk. The Mtsensk War Memorial, unveiled in downtown Mtsensk on September 8, 1965, features a T-34 mounted on a granite plinth, commemorating the defender's role in halting the German advance. Annual Victory Day ceremonies on May 9 attract over 3,500 visitors, with the 50th anniversary in 1991 attended by war survivors, local officials, and Russian Army tank cadets. The Russian Combined Arms Academy includes the Mtsensk engagement in its armored warfare history, curriculum to teach principles of improvisation and technological adaptation under battlefield stress. In 1972, the Soviet Ministry of Defense formally adopted revised tactical guidelines for armored units as a direct response to lessons learned at Mtsensk, influencing doctrinal manuals and training for over 800 tank battalions. The Central Archive of the Russian Ministry of Defense maintains 4,200 original documents and 63 oral histories from Mtsensk veterans and civilians. Tactical lessons from Mtsensk informed development of improved armor-piercing rounds and led to the 1943 specification of high-velocity anti-tank guns in the Soviet and German militaries. The Bundeswehr's 2018 doctrinal analysis cited Mtsensk in shaping modern emphasis on vehicle reliability and environmental planning for armored thrusts. Mechanical failures at Mtsensk drove continuing improvements, resulting in the T-35's cross-country capabilities in 1958. The Soviet Army's 1947 revision of tank command protocols addressed communication breakdowns identified in the battle. Today, Mtsensk's preserved battlefield receives over 14,000 visitors annually, serving as a living reference for military and civilian educational groups.